Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Podcast Host Revealed. I'm your host, Andrew Menczel, and I'm really thrilled today to have joining me all the way from Indonesia is the co-host of the award-nominated podcast, The Wait. Mozhgan, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Really good. Thank you so much for coming on the show. You've uh, made this beautiful podcast called The Wait. How were you happy with it?
Yeah, it was an awesome experience.
And how would you describe the show?
I would say that the weight would bring, the lived experiences of refugees into the ears of the listeners like never before because we used some different, methods of recording and, interviews, field recordings and the audio diaries and just try to combine all of these different techniques together with Nicole Curby, the other co-host of the weight. And anyone that listened to it, they said that it was a unique piece of work that brought really the experiences of refugees into it.
It is a unique piece of work, but it is your life story, and it's a powerful story with a lot of ups and a lot of downs. How did you feel going into the project about opening yourself up to the public through this podcast?
Well, I feel like my life as a refugee has been quite public since 2017 when I started my organization here in Indonesia to give, legal aid and advice and support to refugees. And I know that I always wanted to make something. I always wanted these stories to be out there in the world. We just didn't know how. But with Nicole Kirby, we have been talking about it for about 2 years before we even started making the podcast. We were thinking about making something to share these stories with people, and we ended up with the idea of the podcast, and I loved it. Since day one I knew that I wanted to do this.
Well, that's great. And let's go back to the beginning. How did you plan the show?
Well, we were planning a lot of different things. We were planning to share the stories from my point of view and also a lot of other people in the refugee community that we interviewed for the podcast as well. But then as we were doing it and Nicole came to Indonesia to start recording the interviews, um, we kind of, try to play around with it a bit more to just make it look more realistic, sound more realistic. So we did lots of field recordings as well as interviews, and also later when Nicole was putting the pieces together, um, Michael Green came in, and he helped a lot with how the storyline went along, and it totally changed at that point, and just became much better than what we anticipated before.
And is Michael Green from The Guardian as well?
No, Michael Green is not from The Guardian. He is also the producer of the Messenger podcast,
Yep.
which is another award-winning podcast. Yeah, he's not with The Guardian.
Okay. And sounds like you got things back on track. So, when you went in and started recording, interviews and sounds for the podcast, what was your approach to that, and how did you kind of feel, delving into recording, elements from your life and family, and interviewing people that are in, a really difficult situation like you've been in?
It was challenging. I'm not gonna lie. It was very challenging, especially when I was recording my audio diaries. It was some dark moments and days of my life that I was, recording them because I knew that one day I want to share this, and I recorded so much more than what eventually went into the podcast. But although that it was difficult, but just because I had the feeling of I want to share this and it's going to impact, positively on the refugee community as well. People are going to know more about the refugee community and what really goes down into our lives. I had this sense of kind of happiness, that I can share this, because when I was recording, it was like a little therapy between me and my Zoom recorder. I was just sitting in my closet recording my heart out, and it was just like talking to someone. And when we were recording things with the refugee community, with other refugees, it also felt challenging at times because we were talking about really difficult moments in their lives and also really sad stories as well. So sometimes after the recording, me and Nicole would be like so upset and impacted, by what we just heard, and people wanted to talk. They wanted to talk about these things. It was really difficult at sometimes, but it was also enjoyable because people trusted us. There were lots of trust between us, and after a while, that we were talking to that person, they forgot about the microphone and they started just talking and talking. And it was really important for us to see that they feel comfortable as well sharing their stories, because I am from the refugee community, and Nicole has been spending time in Indonesia for a few years before that as well, and has been there since day one that I started my NGO. And basically people know her, so there was lots of trust going into this.
I imagine that trust was very important to getting people to open up. Uh,
Yeah.
you spoke about that sort of cathartic experience speaking into your audio recorder, and was it almost like a journal or a diary you could just pour out the way you were feeling at the time?
Yeah, exactly, it was that. Anything I was feeling that day, I would just say the date of the day and just talk about what has happened and how I felt, and all of my feelings around it. I would just share it and just feel so much lighter afterwards.
What was it like when you would go back and listen to those recordings?
It's difficult. Honestly, until now, I'm not able to listen back to some specific parts that are bringing back, memories and
Too
are
upsetting?
traumatizing or too upsetting for me, because it's my life. I'm not listening to somebody else's story. So it does bring back so many memories of that specific day and feelings around it. And it's very difficult, specifically the parts in the podcast that are about my family's experience and my dad's mental health. Like, those are the parts that have been the most difficult for me to listen back to.
And do you feel a sense of responsibility telling this story?
I do feel a sense of responsibility, but all I knew that it was that we wanted to share this. We knew that it's going to be impactful.
Yeah, and how did it sort of affect your relationship with your family or the refugee community? Doing the podcast, did it? Yeah, how did it affect your relationships?
We already have a really good relationship with the refugee community, and in the first place, this is the reason that they started opening up and they agreed, to have this interview. And they were so eager. There were so many other people that really wanted their stories to be shared in the podcast, but we could only use so many stories, and there's lots of similarities also between stories. So after the podcast went out also, we heard so many positive feedbacks from the refugee community, and they were really happy that finally there's a piece of work out there that can show their experiences in a different way, from their eyes, from their perspective. And they had control over it. Like, we were trying to be so respectful of their privacy and what they wanted to share and what they didn't want to share. So they were really happy. On the other hand, I got some little bit of feedback from some of the people in the refugee community around, the stigma about refugees being, um, uneducated or poor or homeless. These are the things that we wanted to kind of change the point of view of the listener about, because most people think that refugees are this vulnerable group of people that are just living on the street. They are very helpless, but it's not the truth. It's Refugees are from all these different backgrounds, with different education backgrounds, different work backgrounds, everything. So I wanted to share that, and I am one of those examples as well that are quite, it's quite surprising for people when they see me and my life and what I'm doing. You're like, oh wait, are you a refugee? Like, aren't you supposed to be like so poor or on the street or something? So some of the refugees in the community were giving me the feedback that, oh, you are not an example of a refugee because you're like living this extravagant life in the public opinion. You're having a pet, you are living in a nice house. This is not a very good representation. Maybe it doesn't show the vulnerability of refugees. What is this notification sound going off?
I'm not sure. Just
Yeah.
sorry, keep going. Yeah.
So some of the refugees were a little bit hesitant about putting out this type of outlook on refugees, the reality of it, and they were like, maybe you're not showing the vulnerability of refugees because you look like a have it all person. But this is what I wanted to share. I wanted the public to see that refugees are coming from all different backgrounds, and They can be rich, they can be poor, they can be educated, they can be uneducated. I mean, there's all sorts of things, really.
Yeah. So I guess, how did you take that feedback?
I explained it to them. I told them, it's better to listen to the podcast because it's not just me. It's not just my story. It's a lot of other people. I mean, we are interviewing people who are living on the road. We are interviewing people who are living in shelters and camps in other cities. And it's really bringing all different types of, challenges and lives of refugees all across Indonesia. It's not just one. I feel like it's a really good balance between all the different types of lifestyles that refugees have and all the different challenges. And after they listened, they would come back to me and be like, yeah, you are right. You did include the perspective of everybody.
Yeah, such a powerful story. And what about sort of the reaction to the podcast? You, other refugees from Iran, friends, family, were they proud of you? Was your family proud of you going and doing this?
Yeah, they were really supportive. I haven't had any bad feedback, honestly. Everybody was so excited and supportive of it. Back, from back home, we are not in touch with a lot of people. And some of my old, university student, my college, classmates, my university friends, they didn't know where I was for many years. And then they heard the podcast after many years that I disappeared. And they realized, what happened and what has been done. And some of them found me on social media and started, texting me and saying that, oh my God, I can't believe you went through this, but you came out the other end, and we are happy that you're fine. So I some people did reach out to me that I've not been in touch to for many years, and it has been really interesting that the feedback has been great. Even from a few family members back home, they had no idea what we've been through all these years that we were in Indonesia. And yeah, I feel like, indirectly we kind of gave them this idea of what refugees lives look like, because they really didn't understand. Some people back home, after we moved out, we obviously didn't tell anyone, just didn't know, and lots of gossip happened, and nobody knew what's happening with our life. But after the podcast, people understood. But yeah, many years later.
Many years later, of course. Has it changed the way you view yourself?
Not really. I'm just super happy that these stories are finally out there and people can understand things differently from our point of view.
Oh, that's good. Now, what's next for the podcast? You've done 5 episodes. Do you want to do more? Do you want to try and follow this story a little bit more, or do you think that's enough?
Well, we do talk about making other episodes, but not right now. My story hasn't ended, and the situation of refugees in Indonesia and the policies around it, and nowadays, other things are happening. Lots of changes happening, relating, the refugee-led initiatives in Indonesia and what we are doing with it. So I feel like there will be other episodes in the future. I don't know when, I don't know exactly, how, but I'm sure that there will be a continuation
Yeah, and
of sorts.
that'd be good because your story, as you say, is still got to play out. But what about what did you learn when you were doing the show? Like, what was the process of podcasting like for you? We spoke about going and approaching other refugees. What are some of the things that you'll take away from this experience of producing a podcast personally?
Well, I've never produced any sort of audio. I never produced any sort of audio before. I mean, I've been doing lots of interviews on video, and I do like YouTube and stuff, but I never touched an audio recorder before. So in the beginning of the when we wanted to record a podcast, Nicole has sent me an audio recorder, and she was teaching me on video call how to use it, and it was such a cool experience for me, just learning how to play with audio, how to adjust the levels and volumes, what's the distance from your mouth, and everything. And then my dad helped me make a little booth, and we put like these paddings in the middle of it, inside of it, so we make it sound like an insulation. And I've been like sitting inside that little booth in my living room, covering it with a blanket and recording and sweating because Jakarta is super hot. But it was a really cool experience. I loved recording, and I also really liked the editing part of it. Although I didn't do any editing, but I did learn some from Nicole. And seeing all those sound waves on the screen, I'd be like, are you speaking with the aliens? Like, this looks like something out of an alien movie, all the sound waves on the screen. It was a really cool experience. I learned so much. I still have lots to learn, but it's a new skill that I picked up, and I really love it. Most of my Twitter contacts and followers are now from different radio stations and audio producers. And I feel like, sometimes we make jokes about it with Nicole that if I ever wanted to have a career in audio, I could. But
Definitely could.
yeah, I mean, it's really cool. It's a really cool experience. I love it.
And did it? I guess did it? You know, I wouldn't say help, but did it? What did it do to your relationship with your family? You know, talking to your dad about his mental health issues, and what did that do to your relationships?
With my family, they also were really supportive and happy of sharing this experience, although at times they were a little bit concerned about the impact of this because we were sharing so much. But eventually they were fine with it. Like, my mom was at some parts of the podcast a little bit concerned about the things I was sharing about my beliefs. She was like, if we are still living in Asia, religion is an important thing. For example, like, you're not supposed to share that publicly. It's okay, whatever opinions you have, but maybe don't share it. But then after I talked to her more deep, that what it means to me and it's important for me to share all of my different opinions, then she understood. Same way with my dad. He just wanted to make sure that, yes, we want to bring a positive impact and we want to share these stories, but let's make sure it's not impacting us negatively or any other refugees who are sharing their stories. But generally they were super supportive. We got together so many times to record for the podcast and share all of these things. And I feel like it brought us kind of closer to each other, because they were times that we were sitting at lunch and recording, or there were times that I took my recorder to the hospital when I was taking my dad to the visit the psychiatrist. And I feel like it brought us closer, if anything.
That's nice because sometimes actually in podcasts you end up having conversations you wouldn't have normally. It does make you come at things from different points of view.
Yeah, I think it kind of did that too, because otherwise we wouldn't sit down and have those conversations like on a normal day.
Yeah, and you spoke about your mum having concerns about putting, say, out religious beliefs and things like that. Did you have any concerns about that?
I didn't necessarily have concerns that this would impact me negatively. Um, I was a little bit worried about, the opinions of my friends and people around, but nothing too much. But generally, just to make sure that everything is fine and we're not going to be impacted by anything, because not just religious aspects or beliefs. I shared so much of our life, right? I shared our story, I shared our political situation back home. We shared so much, and I just wanted to make sure that this is not going to impact us. So we got the transcript legally checked to make sure that nothing is going to have a backlash or be bad for us. And after that we felt more comfortable, but it was challenging. I found myself at days like crying because I couldn't decide what to put in it and what not to put. And I really wanted to share these stories. I didn't want to, delete pieces from it, because then it wouldn't be my story anymore. So it was very challenging at times. I was like sitting crying and talking to Nicole, like, I really want to share this, but I'm concerned. But after we got it legally checked and everything, I felt comfortable to share everything.
Yeah. So how did you make the decisions then? What went in and what went out?
It was everything was in my hand. Everything was my decision. Nicole and Michael and the producers from The Guardian, everybody gave the full control to me. They were like, this is your story, you can choose what you want to share. And yeah, after we got it legally checked, I decided that, okay, if it's not going to impact in any way, shape or form, then I'm happy to share it.
Yeah, that's very brave of you.
Thank you.
I can imagine those moments where you said you were crying and you're grappling with what to put in. It must have been really difficult trying to sort of work through that. And you when it's your story, it's harder to edit.
It is harder. Like, if when it comes to other people's stories, although there are so many similarities, Yeah, it was easier because it's not me going through it, but for Nicole, it was very challenging also to pick out pieces of the stories and put them all together.
And what is your situation now? In the podcast, it's made clear, you can't legally work, you can't get a pass, you can't, you're basically living in this sort of void. Um,
Hmm.
how is your situation now? Has it
It's
changed or is it the same?
it's the exact same. Nothing has changed.
Yeah, right. And how are you going?
It's difficult, honestly. It's very difficult, but I'm trying to, take it one day at a time and not, to stress about it too much because I can't change anything about it really, and focus on my work with my NGO, and that's like one of the things that gets me going and trying to, bring change into the policies, bring change into the refugee community and how INGOs work together and just advocate. That's something that helps me a lot. Just giving services to refugees and helping them is something that brings me so much joy and gets me going.
That's a beautiful thing that turn this what is a very tough situation and try and make a positive impact on those around you. Not a lot of people can do that. I imagine COVID-19 may have made your situation a little worse now that it's even harder to move around and 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 getting to another country will be even more difficult.
Um, COVID-19 surprisingly hasn't changed my situation
Really?
one bit because I've always been having this being in quarantine sort of life. I've always been at home in the past decade, really. I've always been at home, distance from people, not being able to communicate with people, not being able to travel. And I feel like, if anything, COVID-19 kind of uh, brought this kind of perspective to people's lives, because they had to go through this and they finally, understood more what we go through. Like in the beginning of COVID, when the quarantines started, I remember talking to my friends back in the US or in Australia. They were really upset about it. They were like, what do we do? We're just stuck at home. We can't work. We can't go to school. We can't do anything. I was like, this has been my life for the past nearly decade. I don't I'm not challenged by it. The only impact that COVID-19, like I feel like it had an impact on, is the resettlement process is getting slower. Obviously, there are less departures happening for refugees to go to other countries, but that's really it. There is nothing else that really impacted me. Um, yeah, nothing
Yeah.
else really. My life has been like this for a
I
long time.
am, I'm really lucky, I'm Australian and, we're really lucky to come from this country. And I've always felt, that I had a home in Sydney. And, that's obviously really important to people to have that. But, you don't have a home now. And, you know,
Yeah.
I guess, how do you sort of grapple with that, the country you were born in is not your home anymore?
For me, the idea of home is, it might be a little bit different. I can call a place home when I can feel comfortable in it, when I can have freedom in it. It really doesn't matter if I'm born there or not. I mean, I don't miss Iran. I don't miss it one bit. Like, to say that, oh, I miss, the place that I was born in, or I want to live there and it's really important to me, because we've been suffering there, and we've been in hiding, and the government, it's just a crazy situation to be in. And I didn't feel at home there as well, because I mean, how can you feel at home somewhere that you're being followed and you're
Mm.
worried to be killed or something? You can't feel at home there. But then there are experiences that kind of create that sense of home for me, like being in a four-season place and having, those foods around you and the relatives and the friends. These are the things that are important for me, not the place itself necessarily. So if, let's say, I could feel some of those things here in Indonesia, maybe I would feel like it is home. But unfortunately, it's not, because I'm not allowed to work. I'm not allowed to travel. I'm not allowed to do anything. And I'm not even able to communicate with people that much, because they don't understand my life. They don't understand my situation. They don't know why I'm stuck here. And I have nothing in common with people. We can't have conversations about my life here. Anyone that asks me where I am from, usually I just throw out a country's name and I don't care, because I can't tell them where I am from. It will just start a deep dark conversation that I don't enjoy at all. So, these are some of the reasons that I don't feel like I am being at home. And I always feel this void in my heart, that I don't have a home. I feel like a homeless because I don't belong to here. I don't belong to Iran either. I don't belong to anywhere.
That's very sad, very sad. And I hope
Yeah.
that you do get to make a home somewhere in the future because it doesn't matter where you were born, you're right, but it's what you set up around you. And do you have any prospects? Do you have any aims of where you might be able to get to in the next few years?
Honestly, honestly, I really don't care where. It's really not important to me which country is going to give me settlement in the future. I mean, there are some options that we are trying, to get, but it really doesn't matter whether it be Australia or America or Canada. I mean, all of them are really good countries. Don't get me wrong, they are amazing countries, and I really don't mind whatever country who wants to give me some settlement. I will be happy because I will be able to work, I will be able to study and go to uni. I will be able to have real relationships with people around me. I already have so many friends in Australia that I'm so close with and like in touch with on a day to day. And you know every few lines of our messaging, we are like, I wish you were here, I wish you could come here, I wish I was there, so that we could have this sense of community, this sense of friendship, and freedom together. And also in Canada, I have loads of friends there that we feel like family. We are in touch all the time. So like any of these places would give me settlement, I'd be happy. I would feel like this is home. I'm not yet in Canada. We are trying to get through private sponsorship to hopefully be able to get settled there, but nothing is for sure. My family haven't applied yet. Only I applied 2 years ago, and it's still in process. I don't know what's going to happen. I can get rejected, or I can go there. But I already feel like I could be at home there because of all those senses and experiences that I will be able to have. Most importantly, get my freedom together and be able to do things like normal human beings.
Yeah, live. Mm. Just basic human rights. Well, where did those friends in Australia and Canada come from? Did some of them come from your podcasting?
No, before the podcast, when Nicole came here, I, this close relationship and friendship happened between us, and we kept it going until now. So through Nicole, I met so many people, and friends. And then also through my work, through my NGO, I've been mentored by an Australian lawyer, Trish Cameron. She has been mentoring me since 2015, 14, around that time. And we've been really close. So she introduced me to a lot of people there. And also through my work, again, I've been on so many different panels and, speaking at conferences and universities and everywhere. So through all of these works, I got in touch with all these different NGO workers and people in the, who work in the refugee sector, and they introduced me to their friends, and just have this amazing relationship with this bunch of people that are just so lovely.
You must have quite a bit of personal strength in your situation to be able to, grow and develop whilst everything's being taken away from you.
Yeah, trying to make the best of the situation, really, just trying to keep the contacts and relationships going and bring some positive impact through my work as well.
Well, you've been really generous with your time, but I want to finish on one question about your podcast. What's the favorite or one of the most, cherished memories from doing the podcast that you'll take with you into the future?
There are a few pieces in the podcast that has impacted me so deeply, and if it wasn't for the podcast, it wouldn't happen. Some conversations happening between people, like one of the moments that will impact me forever and I will not forget those lines of conversations is the interviews of the kids in Makassar in episode 4, that they are talking about their experience so deeply and how much they wanted their stories to be shared, and they would contact us all the time, be like, when is it going to be out? We really want this, things to be shared with the world. So that's one part of the podcast. The story of Mehdi, again in episode 4, the guy that lives behind a church for years. That story is something that I will carry with myself as well. And then in episode 1, when I was interviewing refugees who were homeless, living on the street in West Jakarta, a kid approached me and thought that I am a journalist. like those few moments are the ones that I will carry with myself forever, because they struck something, inside me, and it's really, that was really important to me, that wouldn't happen otherwise. So those are some of the memories that I will carry with myself.
Oh, well, that's really nice, and congratulations on your podcast. I don't think I'll ever forget this interview. So thank you for your time, and you know, good luck with your situation. We'll be all thinking of you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me today.